Hello, welcome to Real Person Reviews. I'm Sam, and I'm Real Person. And today I want to talk to you about Space Station Silicon Valley for the Nintendo 64. And it's sort of an interesting one because this is a game that I remember playing it like years ago. And it's just a thing that we rented, and I think maybe only once even. I'm not even sure. And I remember it being really interesting, and then after a while, I was like, I want to play that game again. I vaguely remember that being cool. I'd love to play it again. And then for a long time, I couldn't find it, and eventually did find a copy. And I mean, it was in a used game store, but it still got like a rental sticker on it, so for like a video store. So I'm assuming that basically it's probably was more of a rental game in general, or that's just quite a coincidence that this also has this. But it's one I don't hear a lot of people talk about, so I thought it might be fun to do a review on it, and actually be able to finally play through the whole thing and have an opinion on the actual game, rather than just this memory of it being neat to play for a day or whatever. So, Space Station Silicon Valley is basically like a 3D puzzle platformer. The plot is not really important. There's a little opening cutscene to kind of explain it, but it's basically there's this space station Silicon Valley, that apparently gets taken over by the robotic animal inhabitants of it, and they send somebody from Earth to try and stop them, because they think the space station is going to be brought back to Earth to destroy it or something, I guess. So they just hired this scientist and his robot to go do that for them. And on the way there, they get into a fight over the radio. They crash land into the space station. The robot's body gets destroyed. And then all this stuff is this little bug-like chip that goes in and can actually inhabit the dead bodies of the robot animals and then use their abilities. And that's the main plot, is trying to get those pieces of the body back, stop the animals in the space station so they don't destroy Earth, so they can get their bounty for that. And that's kind of how they set that up. You can watch the opening cinematic for further information. So basically, it's all done just a bunch of levels you pick from, and you kind of have to play them in order. There's like 4 zones of levels. And after beating so many levels in a zone, you go to the next zone. Each zone kind of has its own, like, theming. Like, the first one, I think, is supposed to just be, like, Europe, I guess. That's how they explain it. It's basically just, like, standard outside, I guess, kind of places. Then there's the snow zone, and there's, like, a jungle zone, and, like, a desert zone. So that's kind of how it's split up. And if you beat so many levels in a zone, you unlock the first one in the next zone, and you have to keep beating those in order. And at the end of each zone, there's a kind of a special level to do where you can get part of your body back, and then you have to beat all of that stuff in order to unlock the final level. It kind of wraps up the story of the game. So basically, in each of the levels, you start off inside of an animal, and you have to use their abilities to usually defeat some other animals and use their bodies and switch between them to solve these puzzles of how to complete certain objectives in the level and ultimately get to the exit teleporter, which is only active once you complete these other objectives, which might be killing things or collecting things or hitting switches. It really depends on the level and what they want you to do. And so you might have to switch between different animals. You might not have to, depending on the level and what you're trying to do. And every animal basically has the set of stats they have with usually either if you walk up to a TV that's in the level, the biggest TV with static on it, you can see your stats if you need a refresher. But the first time you inhabit an animal, it will tell you their stats if it's a new animal. Things are like, basically every animal has a skill for like the A button and the B button, which means some of them don't necessarily have attacks, some of them don't necessarily have jumps, and they all have their own unique abilities. You'll have to take advantage of those to beat those levels and do certain things in the levels, depending on what their A and B abilities are. They also have other stats like how strong they are, like how much damage they do, how much damage they can take, Their fall distance, their water resistance. Some animals can actually will float in the water. Some will sink. Some of them will be hurt when they go in the water, and some of them will be hurt when they're out of the water. So there's kind of that going on. I mean, you get different animals generally depending on, each zone sort of has a few of their own animals that are more unique to the zones as well. It's mainly doing those objectives and getting to the end of the level. But there's also these energy cells you can pick up. There's 15 of those in each level for you to find, scattered throughout the level. And also there is a trophy hidden in each level. Usually you have to complete some kind of task that's unspecified, and once you do that task, you can get the trophy. Sometimes it's killing all of these enemies, or sometimes you just have to find it. Sometimes it's just doing something that's maybe not super obvious, but there's still some kind of clues to it, and you're like, oh, I did this thing here, and it made that happen, so there are those, and collecting all of those will unlock a bonus mini game you can play afterwards if you get every single one. The boss level, or whatever, not boss level, but the final level of each zone is usually based on some of the mechanics of the game, but putting a spin on them. So it's usually not like a puzzle game thing there. It's usually more of just a do this specialized mini game and beat a certain score, and then you can replay those and try to beat your high scores for them, or your score, your time, or whatever. And that's the only other things to mention, I think, are you get points for collecting those energy cells and for killing enemies. Whenever you die, your score resets, and you have to start that level over again, but there's no lives or anything like that. So whenever you die, it's just redoing the current level you're on. You're not going to lose progress from other ones or anything. Also, you can get energy, or I guess health, I guess you would call it, by picking up these little balls of electricity. They can heal you if you've taken damage from other, animals or hazards that have hurt you, or fall damage, whatever. Whenever you're outside of an animal host, if you're just walking around as the bug, your health will slowly drain as well. So you can't just walk around as that the whole time, or you'll die. I mean, that is pretty much, aside from explaining in depth all the stages and animals and everything, that's pretty much what you do until the final showdown after you beat all the levels. And I mean, that's mainly it. And I like a lot of stuff about this game. I really like the cartoony style to it, and the sort of goofiness of some of the plot stuff, whatever, the mission objectives and stuff, and just the bit of charm they put into these different animals and their quirks. I think that's really fun. It almost gives me a feeling of a second-rate Rareware game, which is that's not a bad thing. I like Rareware games, so to have something that kind of reminds me a bit of one of those, even if it's not on the same level, that's still a compliment. Even if it's a little backhanded, it's still a compliment. Got some catchy music going on in there, and solving the puzzle stuff is pretty fun, having to switch between the different animals. You're not necessarily just going to use whatever one you like the most and get through. You can if you want, if you don't want to collect all the stuff. But especially if you want to collect all the stuff, you usually will have to switch to multiple different animals, try out their different things. Some of the puzzles are, I think the way the puzzles are done too is good. Collecting those little collectibles is fun for the exploration, and sometimes it's tough to find out how to get to all those collectibles. And just a lot of the secret trophies too usually have some pretty good puzzles where it's not super obtuse, where it's I don't even have any idea, I just have to do a random thing and hope it works. But they're not super obvious, okay, this is clearly I'm supposed to take this thing and do this, It's a difference between, it's a middle ground between a Simon's Quest, kneel by the wall for 5 seconds with the red crystal equipped, and a Zelda puzzle of okay, well, this thing has a crack in it, and they've been giving me bombs lately. I wonder what I have to do. It's a decent enough middle ground where there's some stuff to kind of guide you, but you have to still experiment to figure it out, actually. I think that's done really well in that aspect. And it's cool that, it does incentivize you to explore the levels and try all the stuff. there's different ways to solve some of these puzzles too. Like sometimes you can do stuff with some animal that's there or a different one, and whichever one you use, it might depend on how you play, which one is easier or better for you to use sometimes too, which is interesting. Little mini game things are also like the challenges they do at the end with playing around with those mechanics are kind of fun, just because they're having fun with these mechanics they've already built in, and the fact that you don't lose tons of progress, I guess, is kind of nice too. Where it's like, oh shit, I died, but I just have to do this level over again, I guess. So it's not like a huge deal. It's not like I just lost a ton of progress. It's only just this level's progress. But there's some downsides to this as well. Like, it can be annoying to lose progress on a level where you're trying to be really careful. Like you spent a lot of time being very precise and like careful and cautious, and then something crazy happens you weren't expecting, and you die really quickly, and it's like, well, shit. And like you have to do all that over again, and it's like, do you want to be cautious about it again, or do you want to risk doing it a little more sloppily if you can do it faster and still get through well enough? And it's kind of hard sometimes to want to redo that, at least right away. It's good pick up and play ability, I guess, if you can put it down for a while and then come back and be like, okay, I'll try it again now. But also, if you don't remember all the stats and everything of an animal and what they can do, it's kind of annoying that you have to be like, okay, well, I have to find the TV thing. There's not always an easy way to just quick get another like look at what this animal can do again. That should have maybe been an option in like the pause menu, I guess. Or like, it's also annoying that sometimes they start you on a few levels in a new animal you've never used before, and you just have to yeah, figure it out. Sometimes you have to get to a different animal first and then jump back into that one for it to tell you what it even does, or find the TV thing, and that's frustrating. And it's also frustrating to redo a level just because, like, especially if you're trying to play really cautiously like that, when, like, the mechanics aren't super tight. This game lacks a little bit of polish on that. Like, sometimes you're, like, doing a jump multiple times or doing, like, a task multiple times because it didn't take exactly correctly the first times you did it, and that's, like, frustrating. Or, like, yeah, like, sometimes you feel like you're doing the exact same things, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't because of the way the hitboxes are a little kind of, like, the controls are a little floaty on a lot of it, and the hitboxes are a little, like, you know, like, it's kind of iffy, and so that stuff feels like it could have maybe been tightened up a bit more. That can be a little frustrating. Also, the incentive to collect all of the trophies is sort of defeated once you find out that there's actually a bug in the game, which on the level, I believe it's Fat Bear Mountain, where, like, you can get that trophy to show up, but you can't actually collect it. Somehow it's messed up, so, like, you just walk through it, you can't collect it. So in order to get that bonus mini-game thing, you essentially will have to put in a cheat code. And so that sort of takes away some of the incentive to get all of them, because you already know, like, well, if this one's hard to get or I'm having trouble with it, it doesn't matter, I have to put in this code anyways. And then it's easier to kind of justify just not collecting all the stuff in that sense. So that's sort of a bummer. Also, the energy cells, I don't think they do anything to collect all of those. They're just for points, which don't mean anything. It's not like your scores are saved or anything. They go away whenever you shut the game off or die or whatever. And so, like, the scoring system is meaningless, and the energy cells, while they're fun to collect and try to find them, they don't have much incentive other than just wanting to find all the things to say you did it, which I enjoyed, I guess, but I understand people who maybe are, like, looking at those like, what's even the point of me grabbing all these? There's really not. Boy, some of this is rough when you can't find out all the stuff, because this game is so much of a obscure one, at least, that I couldn't find, there's not much information on, like, the wiki I found. Some of the walkthroughs told me how to do some stuff, but not where to find all the energy cells, so, like, I don't know. The internet's not going to be your best tool for trying to expedite the process, necessarily, for a game like this one. Overall, on this one, what I gotta say is, this is a game for... It's a game for people who like 3D platformers, who are fans of the Nintendo 64, and what I would say is, this is not like an essential title. This is not for people who are like, I'm getting an N64, what are some of the first games I should pick up, what are the essentials? This is not one of those. This is for people who already have the Nintendo 64, they have those essentials, and they're looking for stuff that's more in the realm of like, there's more interesting stuff on there. Stuff that's not crap, but maybe stuff that's a little rough around the edges. Maybe stuff that's really interesting, but not necessarily the best of the best stuff that not everyone is going to list on all their goddamn top 10s or something. And that's definitely what this game is. Very interesting. It's got a lot of charm to it. And while it can be pretty frustrating in a few parts, I think it is worth it if you like the idea of puzzle platforming, of the light collect-a-thon elements in there, some kind of cartoony style on that. And like I would say, $20 or less is probably a pretty good price for this, because again, it's not a great game, but I still think it is a decent hidden gem on the system, where it's like, you're not going to hear too many people talk about this or know what the fuck it is. And like I rarely hear people even recognize that it's a Nintendo 64 game, much less have they ever actually played it. And so it's one of those where after playing through the whole thing, at least it was worth the experience of like, oh, that was fun. Like that was cool, and now I know. And I might play it again sometime, I don't know how soon, but it's definitely a nice piece to add to your collection if you do enjoy these types of games, if you're looking to have more than just the standard N64 games that everybody has. I guess that's the main thing. Plus, it's it's a cool name, Space Station Silicon Valley. This just sounds cool. You just hear the name, and you're like, that's gotta be a cool game. And it kind of is. And all I can say is, good luck finding one that isn't from a rental store, because I don't know if that even was a thing. It probably was. That's a good question to leave on in the comments. Have you played this game before? Okay, have you? Maybe not if you're just checking out the review, but maybe that's why you're looking for the review. Just let me know in the comments, because I am very interested, since it seems like barely anyone even knows what the fuck this is when I bring it up. So that would be cool to know. That's a great end shot right there. Look at that. Oh yeah.